Good morning, beautiful people. Sam here. I'm live. It's Thursday, the 7th? Yeah, it's the 7th of October. Live on United People's TV, on Facebook, on YouTube. This morning, we're talking about Paul Pogba staying at Manchester United. That's what the reports from L'Equipe out in France say, that Pogba has finally sort of made his mind up and he wants to stay at Manchester United in the long term. We're going to have a debate about that this morning. You're going to let me know what you think about that in the comments with your opinions, your super chats, as you always do. We're also going to be speaking about Donny van der Beek and apparently the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just does not want to let him go, regardless of whether he wants to play him or not. That's going to be a debate too. We're going to be speaking about Fred and Cavani coming back for Leicester, or maybe not coming back for Leicester. We're going to be speaking about Rashford returning yesterday, scoring a couple of goals against Blackburn behind closed doors. Plenty of talking points, as there always is. And this is United People's TV. Must be the most interactive United show on YouTube. Well, it must be. And we are here, 9:30 in the morning. How are we doing? I can see you. Jordan, you're there. Adnan on Facebook. Joel Jordan. Alan, you're watching on YouTube. And Rays, good morning to all of you. The regulars here, as always. Ian, Jason, Lone, Ozzy, see there too. Takeoff, Stefan. Plenty of members getting involved, as is always the case. But let's talk about Paul Pogba, right? Paul Pogba and his future at Manchester United has been, I always said it would be a circus. It would always be a bit of a sideshow this season because we all know what the situation is. If you don't, and you've been living under a rock, Paul Pogba, his contract runs out in the summer and he can leave on a free transfer. And we've already lost Paul Pogba once on a free transfer, haven't we? I don't think we want to lose him on a free transfer for the second time. But he's had a contract offer on the table from Manchester United for a long, long time. But yesterday, reports coming out from France say this. Paul Pogba is no longer hiding his desire to extend his Manchester United contract, becoming one of the best paid players in Premier League history. Now, look, throughout this, you let me know what you think in the comments below. Fire in your comments, fire in your super chats, get your opinions in and get your opinions heard. We'll head over here. This is the original article out in L'Equipe in France. Said why Paul Pogba now wants to extend Manchester United. Solicited by PSG last summer, Pogba, who's at the end of his contract, no longer hides in private his desire to extend with, as bonus, one of the highest salaries in the history of the Premier League. And I want to know where you stand on this. Quickly, before we remember this, anything that Paul Pogba has on the table for Manchester United is not new. Paul Pogba has had a contract offer on the table for a long time from United. As Fabrizio reminded everyone last night, Paul Pogba has a contract extension proposal on the table since last July. Now, I don't know whether he means July just gone or July before. Either way, he's had a contract offer on the table for a few months at least. Long-term new deal and increased salary. There's no final answer yet from Pogba's side and his agent Raiola. Man United have waited on his decision and have been pushing for months. That is the case and has always been the case. And a lot of people certainly will be angry because of Mino Raiola. A lot of people just don't want Manchester United to be dealing with Mino Raiola. Basically had that face on. Whenever anybody mentions the name Mino Raiola, that's the face you pull. That is the face you pull. Stinky, stanky, get out, don't really want to deal with you. But Paul Pogba, I did a video, some of you will remember, I did a video last November. Why Paul Pogba has to leave Manchester United or why Man United should be getting rid of Paul Pogba. And I sort of went into detail because at that time, I really felt strongly, that's just under a year ago now, I felt really strongly that Paul Pogba wasn't worth the circus anymore. Because it's always been the case with Paul Pogba. When Paul Pogba's on form, he's massively worth the circus. Paul Pogba is one of the, and honestly, you can't argue with it. Your opinions on Paul Pogba, like whether he's the right player for Manchester United or whether he isn't, that's fair. But you can't argue with the fact that when he's on his form, Paul Pogba is one of the most gifted central midfielders in world football. Easily the best central midfielder we've got at our club by some margin. I mean, if you want to try and include Bruno in that sort of sphere, then maybe that's an argument to have. But Paul Pogba is incredible. He really is. Now, he's never hit those sorts of heights consistently for Manchester United. I think that's largely down to the system, largely down to the positions he plays in, and also largely down to the things that are just a bit different in the Premier League than with France. With France, he's always gifted a ton of time. Whenever he's playing alongside Kante, he's gifted a ton of time in central midfield. Doesn't get that at United. And he finds himself under pressure a little bit too much on the ball and loses it. But that's a conversation for a different point. But you let me know in the comments now. What do you think about this? Do you want Paul Pogba to stay at Manchester United in the long term? Or do you think, look, Man United, what we should, because we've got three options here. All right, you can choose one. Number one, Paul Pogba signs that new long-term contract. He's here to stay. He's part of our team going forward. Number two, we sell Paul Pogba in January. We try and get, I don't know how much we get for him, 30, 40, 50 million if we tried really hard. Or C, we lose him on a free in the summer. Which of those do you honestly, genuinely think is A, most likely, and B, is the best solution for Manchester United? Because I think there's points you could make for each case. I know which one I think probably suits Manchester United the most, but let me know what you think in the comments below. I can see here, and I suppose this is the conversation that a lot of people have. Dean, I can see that your comment popped up. No, he is toxic to the club. I mean, Pogba's not toxic, but his agent certainly is. Anuj, Madrid and Juve can't afford his salary. PSG is the only team, but they're loaded. He won't get in the 11. I think he must think about this. I mean, he has been thinking about it. It's exactly why he hasn't signed that deal. It's exactly why he's been leaving his options on the table. But let me go down with you in the comments. CJ, you're saying, I'm with you, Sam. He's not worth a headache. He has no consistency and his attitude sucks. Spot on. We need a leader and consistency in the midfield, and he simply doesn't fit the bill. Cut him loose in January. Now, CJ, I would put a caveat on top of that. That's how I felt in November. But as is always the case, and people, don't ever be worried about this because it's football. Your opinions are allowed to change. All right? I did a video with an apology to Solskjaer a while ago. And I'm not going to do an apology video to Paul Pogba, but again, I'm seeing what you're going to say in the comments before I speak my mind. A, you're saying is the best solution. Says Elias, keep him at the club, get him to sign that new contract. Take off, you're saying stay. Richie, you're saying stay. Victor, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you. You're saying stay. Richard over here, as a member, you're saying stay. Angela, mixed feelings. Would love for him to win something, but it's a bit of a risk. And Sean, you're saying not worth it. Albert, you're disagreeing. Man, Paul Pogba, I think out of all the players at our club that we've had in recent years, I don't think anybody has divided people more than Paul Pogba and the situation around Paul Pogba. And I think this comment here is pretty much bang on from Chris. You have to find the right system and he will be world-class like he is for France. That is absolutely what I think. I would keep Paul Pogba. I would get Paul Pogba to sign that new contract. If you're going to be trying to win the Premier League and trying to win the Champions League, you simply don't let players like Paul Pogba leave your football club. What you do is you find the best positions and the best style to get the most out of that player inside your football club. Now, the problem for me is the system. The problem for me is the lack of balance that we have anywhere really on the pitch. The only balance that we have, ironically, is inside our defence, which is just a shambles at the moment. So, I mean, you could say that we've got Maguire, we've got Varane, we've got Shaw, Wan-Bissaka and De Gea, which on paper is balanced, but in reality, we're nowhere near balanced. And that stems from the midfield. It stems from everything. In the same way that attacks start in defence, defence starts in attack. And Manchester United, when it gets to our defence, it's just not good. That's a whole different conversation altogether. But that, for me, is the problem here with Paul Pogba. How are you doing, Bazzy? Nice to see you down in the comments, member of the gang. I don't think we've ever truly played the right system to get the most out of Paul Pogba. You saw him against Leeds on the opening day of the season. We played fantastic. Paul Pogba played nothing short of magnificently. 4 assists he got in one game against Leeds. And that was because he played in a system where he was allowed to go forward a bit too much. Not too much. He was allowed to go forward a bit more. With Paul Pogba, it's very clear that when you play him in a double pivot, he can play in a double pivot. It's not his natural style of play. It's not natural for him to be under that much pressure, that close to his goal. So he has to try and learn on the job. Has to learn that position. But as I said, he plays that position for France. But international football is a very different type of football, really, to Manchester United. And he's just not... He's not naturally suited to that role. It's like a square peg, round hole. Paul Pogba can play central midfield. No one's saying he can't. And I'll be honest, he has to get used to that role if we're going to stick to this 4-2-3-1. Because I can see, Chris, you're saying I would play a 4-1-2-1-2 diamond, normal defensive, probably holding Fred or McTominay there behind Paul Pogba and Bruno. Paul Pogba's, Paul Pogba and Bruno? I'm not sure. But with Rashford coming back, and look, I've already said this plenty of times. I'm going to be doing multiple videos on this in the next week or so before we play Leicester. Rashford coming back in means he's going to play left wing, which means Paul Pogba can't really play on the left-hand side of the midfield unless we switch to a 4-3-3, which I don't think we will because we tried it there against Villarreal, and we saw how bad McTominay was playing that holding role on his own. That I understand is the reservations that people have about Paul Pogba, right? I understand if you don't feel that we're playing the right system to get the most out of him. And therefore, signing him or making him one of our best played players, it's like, why are you doing that? Because we're not getting the most out of him. If you're going to get Paul Pogba to sign that, then you've got to play a 4-3-3. And I understand these trepidations. I understand these concerns because I have these concerns as well. I'm worried that Manchester United's system just does not suit Paul Pogba's natural style. And the only way we truly get that is if we keep Paul Pogba at the club and we sign someone like Ruben Neves, like Bissouma, like someone who can hold that defensive midfield role on his own. And it's why I bang that drum so hard about that defensive midfielder, because I could see that. I could see that the style and the system didn't suit Paul Pogba. It suits Bruno because he can operate in the number 10 role, and that's fine. But Pogba's not going to get that position ahead of Bruno. And therefore, Pogba's got to get used to try and fit on Pogba's being basically fit in and around because of how good Bruno Fernandes is. He's just getting like, if you're going to play left wing, play there. If you're going to play holding midfield, play there instead. Because he's not going to get that number 10 role ahead of Bruno Fernandes. Sorry, Chris, how you doing? I see you in the comments, buddy. Pogba is world class. Problem is he's not being played in his best position and with the right system. It's a huge loss if we lose him. It's also a loss if we don't use him right, do it right, Ole. It's exactly what I've just said there, Chris. And it is, if we keep Paul Pogba, it has to be a sign that Manchester United are going to properly move towards that 4-3-3. Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the difficulties that Man United have in playing Paul Pogba inside that midfield too. And as Takeoff's saying right there in the comments, Scott's not a defensive midfielder. He's not a defensive midfielder. I've always said he's not a defensive midfielder. We've all known he's not a defensive midfielder. But out of the midfield options that we have, Matic is just too old. He can't play there regularly. And McTominay, out of McTominay and Fred, you would probably hedge your bets on McTominay being able to grow into a defensive midfielder more so than Fred does. Even if Fred does have the interceptions and the tackles and the tenacity to play that role. Let me go down here. Bissouma's not an option anymore. Well, let's see what goes on there. I will not speak about an open criminal investigation, but we saw what happened yesterday. Let's see what goes on. Anno just saying the diamond won't work until we sign that DMF. Hey, man, I'm not going to repeat the conversations we've all had all summer long. The conversations that I was desperate for us to sign a central midfielder. And I was almost, it was pure desperation at that point for me to sign, because I could see how critical it was to not only get the best out of our defense by having a one pure holding midfielder in front of them to protect them properly, also getting the most out of the midfield shape because you get Bruno and Pogba in their best positions, also getting the most out. That defensive midfield is, or the lack thereof, is honestly, it affects every single other part of the pitch for United. It affects our build-up play. It affects our defending. It affects our passing out from the back. It affects our possession in midfield. It affects our fullback's ability to go forward and have the defensive midfield cover. It affects everything. That's why it was so crucial that we signed one. But we didn't. And now we find a situation now where, look, man, we should all be buzzing, absolutely buzzing our tits off at the idea that Paul Pogba wants to stay and wants to be happy, because a happy Paul Pogba is one of the best midfielders in the world. Rory, I can see you down in the comments there. Let me see what you've got to say, sir. Having Pogba and using him incorrectly is pointless. We'd be better off letting him go and signing a player who can play the position that Ole wants. What is the position that Ole wants, Rory? So you're saying sell Paul Pogba and sign somebody who can really dominate that double pivot? Honestly, I'd be interested to know who that is. I'm not saying there isn't that player, But we've got Donny van der Beek, who, in my opinion, was signed as a Paul Pogba replacement, if anything. In the same way that I've told you this before, in the same way that Kagawa was signed as a Rooney replacement, and then Rooney stayed and Kagawa didn't get opportunities. Paul Pogba, I think Donny van der Beek was signed to replace him, and Paul Pogba hasn't left, and therefore Donny van der Beek hasn't got any opportunities. Simple as that. The issue with Pogba is his defensive work, says Dag. Look, Paul Pogba is so good going forward. I don't give a shit about his defensive work, really. I don't want him to be focusing on defensive work. In the same way that, cool, Ronaldo's pressing stats are terrible. But do I care? Absolutely not. Don't get Ronaldo pressing back. Let him stay where he makes the damage, up front. So in my opinion, I don't really mind that much about Paul Pogba's defensive work. And fit it. I think the thing that's always annoyed me about Paul Pogba is something that's definitely improved on at United, but still isn't as good as I think it should be, is him physically using his body. He's what, like 6'3", 6'4". He's a specimen. And I always find it weird how he doesn't just like use his body between the ball and him and the player and just like shield it more often. I've always felt that Paul Pogba's not got that natural ability to do that in midfield. And it always makes it a bit difficult for him to dominate in that central midfield role. But look, I'll ask you you can answer yes or no in the comments. Do you think that Paul Pogba, between now and the end of the season, or now and January maybe, do you think that he can really improve in that double pivot role? Because when Rashford comes back, and he'll be back against Leicester, in my opinion. When he's back, Paul Pogba has to play in that midfield role, because there won't be any space for him to play on the left. There won't be any space for him to play in the number 10, because that'll be Bruno's spot. So do you think that Man United can work with Paul Pogba in that double pivot midfield? Do you think we can see Paul Pogba getting better and better in that role? Or do you think that just won't happen? Let me see what you think in the comments below here. It's a resounding yes straight away from Takeoff, Yagian, Anthony, Stefan. Eddie, you think so? Oh, no. Arrow, you disagree. Let's have a look here. Anuj, you're saying yes. Benata, you're saying yes. Jaloko, how you doing? Make sure you drop a like on the video. Overwhelming, I would say. Overwhelming majority of you can say yes, but not all of you here. Baron, Richard, you're saying no. Baron, you're saying no. Pogba in a purely double pivot is terrible, whereas for France and Juve, he has had two people to clean up for him. I mean, I think that is a little bit wrong, actually. So if we were to go over here and let's see if we can pull up some France stats. See what their most recent game was. Who was their most recent game? France against Finland. I believe Paul Pogba played every minute of that, didn't he? Yeah, there you go. Let's have a look here. So this is France against Finland, the most recent game from France where Paul Pogba played. He played in a double pivot there alongside Adrien Rabiot, with Griezmann in front, Benzema and Martial up front. Don't you find it hilarious how Martial is now he's getting so much game time with France at the time when he's getting literally zero game time with United, rather than the other way around. When he was playing great for United, he couldn't even get into the French team. But Paul Pogba playing there alongside Rabiot. Let's see where he played in the game before that. So he played there in a midfield too. What about Ukraine, France? There you go, World Cup qualifier. Here, he played on the right of a midfield three. Paul Pogba just gets kind of shifted around everywhere. Even with France, he does. So no Kante in either of those games. Okay, let's go back and let's see where else he played for France. France against Bosnia. World Cup qualifier. Where did he play here? He played on the right of a midfield three. So he played there twice for France in their three most recent games. And look, we all know where he played in the European Championships there. He kind of played alongside Kante. Kante being the player who sort of just sat a little bit behind Paul Pogba and allowed him to do what he did best, sort of drift forward, drift into these positions, get the most out of him. He has played in not typical double pivots, not like a 4-2-3-1, but he's played in France with Kante alongside him, and Kante's incredible, right? Kante is just an absolute demon of a midfielder. But here, he's played alongside Rabiot. He's got an 8.3 there. He played pretty damn well, I would say. So he can operate there. It's just that, for me, you get more time on the ball. You get more time on the ball when you're playing for France, when you're playing international football. I think that's why it suits Paul Pogba a little bit more there than the intensity of the Premier League. Because Rabiot is not exactly he's not a player like like Kante. Nowhere near play like Kante. Matic is too slow and old, says Dag. Over the top, can't cover DM by himself. Look, I've said this before. I've said this a lot of times. If Matic was 5 years younger, our midfield would probably be one of the best in the Premier League. It'll be absolutely untouchable. But he's not. That is the issue. Ian asking how much Rabiot is. I've got no idea. I don't know how old he is. Casper, you're saying absolutely yes, but Ole needs to switch the formation to 4-3-3. And Anthony, you're saying Paul Pogba, if he probably stays, rules out a move for Haaland as the salaries De Gea, Varane, Pogba, Ronaldo are massive. I would disagree. I would say we've got Cavani's leaving in the summer. That's going to free up a substantial amount of wages. And if Martial doesn't have a substantially good season, I think Martial will be sold in the summer. Both of those combined will cover a lot of Haaland's wages. And I think Cavani, Martial leaving and Haaland coming in, I mean, I've literally got a hard on now. I don't have a hard on, but I should do. Because the idea of Haaland playing in the same team there as Sancho, as Rashford, as Bruno, as Pogba, mate, it wouldn't matter if my uncle was playing in defence. We'd still win the games because we'd score a ridiculous amount of goals. Craig, good morning, Sam. Just want to say a happy birthday to my twin, Robin Williams. We're glad that Pogba's going to extend. What does that mean for Donny? We know what Donny is, and we know what Donny isn't, and he's certainly not a player for Manchester United who gets regular football. Let's go here and move on to Donny. Why not, eh? Solskjaer wants to keep Van der Beek in January. He will be reluctant to let him leave, even if the midfielder's prospects do not improve. That's come from Rob Dawson from the ES of the PN. Rob Dawson, very reliable, knows good sources and good information. So Solskjaer, apparently, wanting to keep Van der Beek. Now, this is what I agreed with in the summer. I massively agree with that. I said it all along. I said, look, Donny might want to play every single week, but in the interest of Manchester United and the interest of the quality of our squad, it suits Manchester United better to keep Donny at the club because we need somebody who can be there if Bruno or Pogba gets injured. And having a player like Van der Beek as part of your squad, hell yeah, great news. But I feel like I might have sort of stepped back a little bit. I think I've stepped back a little bit. I feel Donny's done nothing but be professional, done nothing but worked and put himself into a position where he deserves opportunities. And while I know it will make the United squad weaker, I think empathetically, I feel for Donny now. I really feel for Donny now. And I think there's no point keeping a player of his quality and his value as well, by the way, just to rot on our bench if he's not going to be in there in any way, shape or form. That's my own opinion. What do you think? What do you think? Lots of you talking about Haaland here. Look, I'm definitely going to be doing videos on Haaland. Maybe I'll do a video on Haaland next week. Nah, there's too much football going on. Maybe I'll do it in the next international break. But Haaland is someone. Please. Please. Don't care what, just please. Any other questions? Don't matter. We'll talk about them, but just please. I would love to sign him. Stefan, Ole is not supposed to make any more public statements about Donny. He is making a fool of himself in this respect, says Stefan. It is getting sad. And Yagam saying that Donny needs to play. Hell, maybe Donny will play against Leicester because there's an opportunity. I was going to do this a little bit later, but I'll bring it up right now. Manchester United are set to be without Fred and Edinson Cavani for the trip to Leicester. The reason that is the case is because there are 3 games, I believe, for Uruguay and for Brazil during the international break. And the final game, it kicks off at like 1:30 in the morning the day before we play Leicester. So Cavani and Fred will not be playing in that game. Maybe. Nah, there's no chance. Absolutely no chance. Cavani and Fred will be staying there playing with Brazil and Uruguay respectively. And therefore, Man United will be without both of them. Fred, that's going to be something that pleases a lot of you and pleases me as well. And sometimes you have to get look, it's the same way as Martial being injured against Midtjylland gave the opportunity to who? Marcus Rashford to come in and score too. I personally think it won't be Donny that comes in for Fred. It should be Matic anyway. Matic is a player that needs to come into this midfield and play there a little bit more often. But I don't think that Donny will start this game. I hope it's going to be Matic and Pogba. Little spoiler alert for what I want in my preferred 11 there against Leicester. But maybe we'll see Donny at some point. Donny is like a, I don't know, like a Siberian tiger, like a rare tiger, like a mountain lion that you never see. He's like once in like 3 years, it just pops his head out like that. I don't really think he's going to get. I still don't think he's going to start. Let's go down here in the comments. Look, if you're new here, welcome to United People's TV. Genuinely, this is the most interactive United show on YouTube. Please think about subscribing. It's free. And if you would like, join as a member. Join the likes of Stefan, Anuj, Jason, Takeoff. So many of you in the comments as well. Rego, Victor, you need to get on as a member, my friend. Good to have you back as well. Ian, I can see you too. If you want to join as a member, hit that join button. It's the price of a pint. It's basically buying me a pint. And everything is coming into the channel, I'm putting back into it as well. Trust me. Got a new studio coming very, very soon. Next week, spoiler alert. Not spoiler alert, little teaser alert. I'm going to be moving house this week. And we're going to have a sexy new setup next week. So you definitely want to be subscribed because you don't want to miss that. Mish? No, you don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss that. Yes, no Fred. Hopefully he never gets into the team. Look, one thing here, I will absolutely say with certainty, Fred is a good player, okay? In the right circumstances, Fred is the correct central midfielder to use for Manchester United. The problem with Fred is that we keep using him constantly. It's a bit like using Marouane Fellaini and starting him in central midfield every week. Shouldn't be doing that. But Fred, in the right games, trust me, when we're playing away at Liverpool, I think Fred would probably suit that midfield because he has so much energy and movement and we need that dynamism. But playing him at home against Aston Villa, West Ham, nah, it's not what you want. That's where you want a playmaker from deep because you want United to control and dominate the game instead of it being one of those intense matches. So for me, look, I understand the anger towards Fred. He's become a symbol for the problems in Manchester United's midfield. And unfortunately for Fred, he's become a bit of a scapegoat. A lot of it deserved, but no one really ultimately deserves to be a scapegoat, do they? But Fred, honestly, in the right time, in the right situation, Fred is a good midfielder. Fred starts for Brazil, man, alongside Casemiro. Fred's not a shit footballer, all right? So don't just like slate him completely. It's just the fact that he gets used a little bit too often in that midfield when we have other options. And that's what frustrates United fans. And that's why there's such disdain towards him. Because he seems like a decent guy, but I just don't want him to be starting every single week for us. Chris, you're saying Fred is one of the best players to block shots in that stat board thing. He just can't pass. Fred is a decent, he's got great breakup play. That's pretty much what he's limited to. That's why the person who's alongside him in midfield has to be significantly better. CJ, you disagreeing. Come on, Sam. Fred is shit. There have been games this year where I've seen Fred pass the ball away more than he completes passes to us. When you have to wonder if he plays for us or the other team, that's a massive issue. Look, trust me, Fred has some serious downfalls. And as you're saying, his passing range is poor. But in terms of breaking up opposition, that is why Solskjaer likes him so much because he does it better than anybody in that team, apart from Matic. But Matic cannot move around with the same sort of tenacity and energy that Fred does. That's why. That's why Fred will start and continue to start for Manchester United properly until we sign a better ball-winning central midfielder who actually, can pass the ball. And Fred's Brazilian. It's like not that there isn't. I refuse to believe that there is any Brazilian kid that grows up going, you know what, Mum? I want to be Casemiro. I want to be a defensive midfielder, Mum. No, sod that. Why would you? If you're Brazilian, you're growing up, you go, yeah, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho. Yeah, get me a bit of that. I want to be a striker. There is no Brazilian player that grows up and wants to be a defender and wants to be a centre, in my opinion. Obviously, that's a massive sweeping statement and a huge generalization, but there's no way. And in the same way, look, I told you with the interview that we had with Fred, maybe I'll try and pull this up quickly, actually, because this is an important thing. When we spoke to Fred, he was sort of explaining who he is, explaining what his favourite position is in midfield. There you go. Perfect, right there, man. I'm good at this. I'm good at this. Right, let me pull this up quickly. There's subtitles on it. Don't worry, you don't have to understand Brazilian to understand the interview. This is what Fred said to us when we spoke to him, and this is about his ideal role in midfield. Okay.
Acho que essa é a minha posição ideal. Às vezes chegar um pouco mais ao ataque ali, que é como eu jogava no Shakhtar, jogava ali como segundo volante, chega um pouco mais à frente aqui, como claro, os outros times jogam bem fechados ali nos outros times, então acaba que é mais difícil chegar ali perto da área para chutar, entrar na área, é um pouco mais diferente, mas acho que essa é a posição ideal, vem jogando bem, vem melhorando a cada dia.
Look, Fred's made it clear there. He wants to be part of the attack. Right there. Boom, right there. My ideal position is to join the attack a bit more. Fred does not want to be a central midfielder. Look, if anybody wants to watch this interview, it's a good interview. I'm really happy I made this. I'm quite proud of it. I edited the whole thing together, did it all myself. Don't need to worry about that. So yeah, if you want to enjoy that, and that was with Fred. That was in February last year when Fred was sort of like real flavour of the month. It's when he was in really, really good form. But Fred is not. He's not played in that role. He's not played in that role for Manchester United. He's not tasked with joining the attack more. He is tasked with breaking up the opposition. And as CJ says there, as you all say in the comments, look, he can do that, and he is good at that. But ultimately, Fred is just not good enough at bringing the ball through the lines. And that's where his downfall is. That's where Manchester United struggle because we have Fred and McTominay in midfield. And at the same time, you've got McTominay playing alongside Fred. And although his passing range, I would probably say, is a little bit better than Fred's, you've got two players there who do have limited passing ranges. And as central midfielders, you can't have a whole central midfield that has a limited passing range. Not if you really want to break it through the lines. Let me go down to the comments here and see what you're saying. As always, look, subscribe if you're new and keep firing in your super chats. Abhishek, I can see you there. Good afternoon to you, sir. And join as a member if you want. But yeah, keep firing in your super chats with your questions and your opinions. Let me go up here and see. Fred at Brazil says, Ken, is good, but Ole is the faulty manager. Who is to help him out with the passing of our players are always behind the opponent. They don't move to spaces for passes. I think everyone's sort of guilty of that. I wouldn't say that's just Fred. I think that's just Manchester United. We're just bad at playing through the lines, playing through the transitions that we need to be better at. We're just not good at doing it. Whether that's Paul Pogba in midfield, whether that's McTominay in midfield, Fred in midfield, Matic in midfield, it's just all of us. It's a bit of an issue, really. It's a massive issue. Something that I think will hopefully improve Manchester United. And I've got absolutely no doubt that this will. Marcus Rashford's coming back. And Marcus Rashford isn't just coming back. He is coming back with a vengeance. He's coming back, yesterday against Blackburn. He scored twice in a 3-0 win. And according to all reports, he looked sharp. He looked fit. He looked ready. And Rashford, I cannot wait to see Rashford coming back in, man. Rashford, I did a video on it yesterday. If you don't, those on Facebook, you'll obviously have seen these. Those on YouTube, I do regular short videos on Facebook as well, daily ones as well. And yesterday I did one on Marcus Rashford. If you go over to facebook.com/thepeoplesperson, I just did a little 3-minute video on why I'm so excited to get Marcus Rashford back. I really, really cannot wait because Rashford at 100% fitness. Last year, he got a ridiculous amount of goal contributions and assists, over 20, 30, I think. And that was when he wasn't 100% fit. Now he's got his shoulder surgery done. Boom. He's got his ankle ligament that's repaired finally after resting fully. Boom. And he's coming into a team that's got his idol in Cristiano Ronaldo and one of his good mates in Jadon Sancho playing on the other wing with Bruno and Pogba behind them. Mate, it is done. It is done. Our attack is going to be so much better because Rashford's coming back in. And also our defensive intensive press. Nobody presses better than Marcus Rashford. And he will massively set the tone. In the same way that Bruno Fernandes sets the tone with the press in the middle, Rashford will set the tone with the press in attack. And that's significantly important, especially because Ronaldo won't press. It's not Ronaldo's style of play. So we want Rashford to be doing that pressing. Stefan, you're saying it's definitely time for Rashford to come back. I'm so looking forward to Rashford, Ronaldo and Sancho Mate, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Dag, you're saying friendlies are just that and don't count for much. Wouldn't expect Rashford to come in and dominate straight away. Mate, I'll be honest. I would. And I think Rashford to come in, yeah, it might be a friendly behind closed doors, but Rashford's not played all season. And that's his first taste of football. I'm excited to see. Friendlies are just there for fitness. Friendlies are just there to get that match sharpness back. And in the first game back, yeah, sure, it might be a friendly, but Rashford scored 2 and looked razor sharp, apparently. That's what everyone's saying. I'm excited to see him back in the team and him playing for Manchester United. And we need him back in that team. Rashford's going to start. Joshua says, let me know in the comments below. You type yes or no now. Do you think Rashford will start against Leicester? And do you think Rashford should start against Leicester? You let me know in the comments. Because obviously we're spoiled with options up front. But no one's really made that left wing position their own, have they? Martial's played there a couple of times. Jadon Sancho keeps getting played there. Mason Greenwood's even shifted over there and played a few times. But none of them have made that their sort of position in the same way that Marcus Rashford did last season. But let me head down to the comments here and let me see what you're thinking. Will Rashford start there against Leicester? Danny, you're saying yes. First game after an injury and netted twice, says take off. Yeah, it's good, man. Jason, you're saying yes. Yes. Anthony, you're saying yes. John Wave, you're saying yes. Leighton on Facebook, everybody is saying yes. Hell yeah. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. It's just, it is a resounding yes. An absolutely resounding yes for Rashford. And I agree. I want Rashford to come back into that team to play on the left wing because at the same time, it allows us to properly play Jadon Sancho on the right wing. And I know that Jadon Sancho can play on the left wing, all right? So don't come at me and say, Sam, he played there for Dortmund. Yeah, Marcus Rashford can technically play on the left wing and technically play on the right wing. Doesn't mean I want him to start there. And Rashford coming in before, this is a big one. Rashford loves scoring against Liverpool. And we need our team back in if we are going to say that we've got any chance against Liverpool. Because Liverpool looked, I'll be honest, they looked a bit dirty against City. City and Liverpool, we watched that game, we're like, oh, we're not at that level of football. We started off on pace in the Premier League and we've started to drift off. It's because of our midfield largely and our build-up play. Our defence is looking shocking. But whether or not Rashford starts against Leicester, Rashford's back. And I, for one, am extremely, extremely excited about that. As always, everybody fire in your questions, fire in your comments. Keep the conversation going. Mike Lim, you're saying Greenwood is good as a sub, not starting. I would disagree. I think Greenwood's fantastic from the bench and from the starting 11. And he does drift in and out of games, but so does everybody else. There aren't many players in world football that don't sometimes drift in and drift out of football games. Now, we were talking about Paul Pogba. That was the main talking point today. We've had a real discussion, a real conversation here. I would say the majority of you, I think it's fair to say the majority of you in the comments, you would like to see Paul Pogba stay at Manchester United. That's not a completely resounding positive response overall, if I'm being honest. Looking at Rashford there, everybody wants Rashford to start against Leicester, but not everybody wants Paul Pogba to stay at Manchester United. It's going to be interesting to see what develops here, but according to reports from France, if you missed it, you've only just joined in, welcome to United People's TV. Reports from France from the clip saying that he is no longer hiding his desire to extend his contract. It's repeated in the article on the website. Fabrizio here saying that Paul Pogba's got that contract extension. No final answer. Someone's mentioned Raiola's name and look at Paul Pogba's face. That's the issue. Hell, if Raiola wasn't his agent, I don't think there'd be any issue for anybody. Then we had a quick discussion about Van der Beek and the fact that he will not be playing. Cavani and Fred, they're missing for Leicester. And we spoke about Rashford. Yeah, look at that. Right, I'll open it up on the floor. I'll tell you what, I've been thinking about this for a while now. I might build it into the daily show that towards the end for the last 5-10 minutes, I invite you on screen and you can have a conversation with me. Do you think I should do that? You let me know in the comments below and make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you're new. I'm looking forward to this international break is over. I'm bored when there's not as many people. I'm bored when there's not many people, but it's frustrating, really, when you're working so hard and then you see half the audience disappear. But that's what it goes with international football, and that's not your fault because you're all here. You're all loyal. Who said these hoes ain't loyal? I've just called you all hoes. Sorry about that. Sancho will come good if he plays on the right more, says Mike. I absolutely agree with that. Because We signed Sancho as a right winger, man. We signed Sancho as a right winger. I don't care what anybody says. I know he can play on the left, but we signed him as a right winger. We've got Rashford who can play on the left, right? We've got Ronaldo who can play up front. Cool. Both set in their positions. Rashford cannot play on the right-hand side. Sancho can play on the left, but I just think he's more suited if we're looking at the balance of this team, and it's all about balance. The huge imbalance exists on the right-hand side because we don't have that natural winger who can go on the outside. Mason Greenwood does do sometimes, which is with his trickery and his footwork, but Jadon Sancho, please. So look here. By the way, is there any news about Ed Woodward's successor, Stefan? I believe that's going to be Richard Arnold. As and when that's coming up to being official, I will do a video. Everything you need to know about Ed Woodward's successor. But if it is Richard Arnold, ladies and gents, it's like replacing Woodward with a Woodward, basically. It is what it is. A lot of you in the comments there mentioning Newcastle. They're on the verge of being taken over by the Saudi royal family. That means they'll be the richest club in the Premier League. And honestly, having seen what happened to Manchester City coming in, if that happened to Newcastle, they could become an absolutely dominant force in the Premier League. Newcastle with money, with the support they've got and the size of the club they are, that could be dangerous for everybody else. I'll be honest. Why not? Make the Premier League more exciting, more competitive. I would say why not is because I don't want the foreign investment and another Middle Eastern family to take over another English football club and change and probably take it even further up in terms of the amount you've got to spend to win the Premier League. That's what happened when Chelsea came in with Abramovich, and they were the people that really shook that up and changed that. And then City came on top of that. Obviously, Arsenal got Kroenkes. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen, but at the same time, I can see the competitive aspect of it. If they buy Newcastle, we will be top 6. If we're lucky, says Top Dog. David, you're saying, how is it all about balance when you have Fred and McTominay in midfield other than they are both crap? Because Solskjaer, and this is the thing that Solskjaer doesn't really have a leg to stand on anymore with the Premier League, because not the Premier League, just overall. The reason he plays McTominay and Fred together in midfield is to give United more defensive solidity. But we haven't kept a clean sheet. We're on our worst clean sheet run at home in the Premier League at Old Trafford in 50 years. And that's with Fred and McTominay. So the fact of the matter is that we aren't good enough with Fred and McTominay as our 2 central midfielders. And therefore, you can't just use... If we were keeping clean sheets galore right now, no one could really argue too often with Fred and McTominay, but we're not. We're absolutely not. And that's the issue. Big takeovers don't work, says Josh. Look at QPR. Of course, they don't always work, but I think that's because they spent an absolute ton and then got relegated. That probably won't be happening for Newcastle. Although you can't rule it out, actually, because Newcastle are in and around that for the majority of most seasons. But look, I'll wrap it up today. I'll absolutely wrap it up today. Thank you very much for everybody who joined in the comments. Really interesting debate we had there about Paul Pogba. Really interesting conversation about Van der Beek, about Fred and Cavani missing Leicester, and about Rashford scoring 2 behind closed doors. Please make sure you subscribe if you're new to United People's TV. I'll have another video at 1 today. I'm keeping you excited with these videos today. Teaser, I'm going to be taking a look at Gary Neville's ideal starting 11 for Manchester United and reacting to it. And I'll be honest, I think Gary might have been drunk when he released that on Twitter. Jesus, that was an awful team. Anyway, I'll do that video at 1, so make sure you check that out. There'll also be live tomorrow at 9:30, and another video at 1, and another video on Saturday, hopefully, if I can be asked. But make sure you subscribe to United People's TV. Please drop a like on the video if you are new, and I will see you tomorrow morning at 9:30, and I'll see you at 1 p.m. today on YouTube, and also there'll be another video going out on Facebook. Don't say I'm not doing enough content for you, ladies and gents. Take it easy, everybody, and I'll see you all this morning.